Microsoft just posted record-breaking, I mean, truly historic profits, achieving revenue numbers that, honestly, most nations would probably envy.
Yeah, it's wild. It's an absolutely massive scale.
Right. But here's the detail that should, really stop you in your tracks. They did all of this while actively shrinking their total human workforce.
Which is the ultimate paradox of the modern economy right now.
It really is. And today, we are going to explore how this current AI boom is, well, simultaneously printing billions of dollars in revenue, aggressively bleeding profit margins, and entirely rewriting what a traditional tech company actually looks like from the inside out.
Because it is a profound structural shift. I mean, we're moving away from an era where technology companies just sold software licenses, and we're entering a phase where they are essentially becoming heavy industrial conglomerates.
Bounded by the limits of the physical world.
Exactly.
So welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to decode the financial, the operational, and the physical reality of a tech titan at the absolute vanguard of this whole revolution.
And we're tearing into a really fascinating stack of sources today.
Yeah, we've got Microsoft's Q3 fiscal year 2026 earnings press release and the accompanying Form 10Q filing from April 2026, which is incredibly detailed.
Yeah, these SEC filings, they are not just dry ledgers. I mean, if you know how to read the mechanisms behind the numbers, they actually act as strategic roadmaps hiding in plain sight.
Hiding right there in the fine print. So we are going to look past the top line billions to really understand the mechanics of what they are calling the agentic computing era.
Right.
We'll explore the massive physical costs of the AI infrastructure boom, that surprising shift in human capital I mentioned, and the very real cybersecurity and regulatory threats lurking in the shadows of all this growth.
There's a lot to cover.
There is. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because whether you are an investor, a tech enthusiast, or just, someone trying to figure out where the digital economy is heading, the data in these documents reveals the blueprint for the digital world you interact with every single day.
Yeah, it affects everyone.
It really does. So let's start with just the sheer velocity of the money here, because the Q3 numbers are staggering. Revenue hit $82.9 billion.
Which is an 18% increase year over year.
Right. And operating income reached $38.4 billion, up 20%. But the true standout, the thing that really caught my eye, is the AI business itself.
Oh, absolutely.
It has surpassed a $37 billion annual revenue run rate, which is up a massive 123% year over year.
And, just to put that in perspective for a second, seeing a 123% growth rate at a $37 billion scale, that defies the normal gravity of corporate finance.
It's unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, you expect those kinds of percentages from a scrappy, Series B startup that just found product market fit, not a specific division inside a multi-trillion-dollar incumbent.
Right. It's like strapping a rocket engine to a freight train.
That's exactly what it is.
Right. And in the press release, CEO Satya Nadella attributes this hypergrowth specifically to delivering outcomes in what he calls the agentic computing era.
Right, the agentic shift.
Yeah, and we hear the term AI thrown around constantly, but I really want to get precise here. What exactly is the mechanism behind agentic computing, and, why is it driving these specific massive revenue numbers?
Well, what's fascinating here is that agentic represents a fundamental, really a functional shift in how a user interacts with software.
How so?
Well, for the last 40 years, software has been entirely passive.
Right.
You click a button, it saves a file.
Sure.
Even early generative AI was basically just a passive digital encyclopedia. You type a prompt, it gives you text back.
Yeah.
But agentic computing means the system actually has agency. It can take multi-step actions completely autonomous.
Okay, so it's sort of like the difference between asking for a recipe versus hiring a sous chef.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right.
Because with traditional AI, you ask for a recipe, but you still have to go to the store, buy the ingredients, and chop the onions yourself. An agentic AI is the sous chef. You give it an objective, say, audit last quarter's travel expenses and flag anything out of policy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, the agentic system autonomously breaks that problem down, logs into the expense software, cross-references the corporate travel policy, flags the anomalies, and then drafts an email to the accounting department.
So it actually works for you rather than just being a tool you use.
Exactly.
But I mean, are enterprise customers actually buying this at scale, or is this just, visionary corporate speak to juice the stock price?
Oh, the balance sheet proves they are absolutely buying it. I mean, look at the source data. Microsoft Cloud revenue hit 54.5 billion, which is up 29%.
Yeah.
Azure Cloud Services surged by 40%. But the most telling number, the mechanism that really shows the real demand here, is a line item called remaining performance obligations.
Ah, yeah, I flagged that too in the 10Q. That number sits at a staggering $627 billion.
Yeah, which is at 99% year over year.
Yeah, but break that down for us. What exactly is a remaining performance obligation functionally, like in plain English?
It essentially means future contracted revenue.
Okay.
So when a massive enterprise signs a 5-year contract to guarantee they have access to Microsoft's AI tools and their cloud servers over the next half-decade, well, that money hasn't been paid yet, but the obligation is locked in.
So it's guaranteed future money.
Right. And that $607 billion tells you that enterprise customers aren't just running small pilot programs to, test out this agentic AI.
They're going all in.
They are terrified of being bottlenecked out of compute capacity. So they are hoarding server time like prime real estate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're locking in long-term commitments because they genuinely believe if they don't secure that compute power right now, their competitors will.
But hold on, because if everyone is locking in digital real estate for the next 5 years, someone has to actually build that real estate.
Yeah, exactly.
And that brings us to this really interesting collision between software and physical reality. Because you can't have autonomous AI without massive physical infrastructure.
No, you can't.
And the 10Q filing paints a picture of a company buying physical assets at just an unprecedented scale.
Right, because the physical footprint required for the agentic computing era is incredibly heavy. It requires steel, concrete, and silicon on a scale we just haven't seen before.
The cash flow statement lays this totally bare.
Yeah.
Microsoft spent $80.1 billion on property and equipment additions over the first 9 months of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Just let that sink in for a second. $80.1 billion in 9 months.
It's a massive jump.
Right, from the $47.4 billion they spent the prior year. And because they are pouring so much capital into these physical assets, the Microsoft Cloud gross margin percentage actually decreased slightly to 66%.
Yeah, the margins are taking a hit.
So I have to push back here. I mean, isn't this just a massive race to the bottom? We saw this in the late 90s with the telecom boom, right? Where companies laid billions of dollars of fiber optic cables, totally overbuilt the capacity, and then the margins just collapsed. How is this any different?
Well, it's a valid comparison, and it really highlights what we call the infrastructure paradox.
Okay.
You're dealing with software that theoretically can scale infinitely and frictionlessly, but it is running on hardware that absolutely does not.
Right.
To build an AI data center, you aren't just buying standard server racks. You are buying tens of thousands of highly specialized graphics processing units, or GPUs.
Which are not cheap.
No, they are incredibly expensive and notoriously power-hungry.
Right, and the 10Q specifically lists risk factors regarding this. They mention the dependence on permitted land, predictable energy, and water.
Precisely. I mean, you can't just build an AI data center anywhere. These GPUs run incredibly hot. So you need massive industrial cooling systems, which often require millions of gallons of water. And, more importantly, you need a power grid capable of handling the load of a small city just to keep one single facility online.
That's insane.
The energy requirements are immense.
But doesn't that directly contradict their public corporate messaging? Because back in 2020, Microsoft pledged to be carbon negative, water positive, and zero waste by 2030.
It does. It creates a severe internal tension, and the filing actually openly documents this.
Really?
Yeah. AI development is actively raising their energy use and emissions. Training and running these massive agentic models requires exponentially more power than traditional cloud computing.
Oh, wow.
So they are caught in this paradox. The very technology driving their historic 123% growth is making it significantly harder, if not entirely impossible, to meet their own 2030 sustainability goals.
So it's a fundamental collision between the demands of the AI boom and the realities of physics and the environment. Okay, so they are spending double on physical infrastructure, draining local power grids, and taking a hit on their gross margins to build this autonomous AI.
Right.
But to pay for that $80.1 billion in concrete and silicon, I mean, the money has to come from somewhere.
Right.
And this is where we see the human capital shift.
Oh, the reallocation of operating expenses in this 10Q is probably one of the most revealing aspects of the entire document.
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener, especially if you are trying to understand where the job market is heading right now.
Absolutely.
Because buried in the operating expenses section, there's this deeply intriguing detail. We see revenue skyrocketing, we see operating expenses increasing, specifically citing the need to fund AI talent and research and development.
Yes.
But despite record profits, total company headcount actually declined year over year.
Yeah.
They are making more money than ever, but employing fewer people overall.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains a specific phrase that appears repeatedly throughout the filing, which is efficiency gains.
Ah, efficiency gains.
Yeah. The company frequently cites these internal efficiency gains as the primary mechanism offsetting the margin pressure from their massive infrastructure spend.
So wait, they are letting general staff go and using the savings to buy servers and hire highly specialized AI engineers?
Yes, but it goes deeper than just a simple talent swap.
Okay.
This decline in headcount, alongside record profits, is a tangible manifestation of the agentic computing era in practice.
How so?
It proves that AI efficiency isn't just a hypothetical product Microsoft is selling to its enterprise clients. It is a medicine they are aggressively taking themselves.
Oh, wow.
They are applying these autonomous agentic tools to their own internal workflows, coding, HR, operations, to do more work with fewer human hours.
So it's the ultimate proof of concept, but also a pretty stark warning. I mean, if Microsoft can achieve historic growth while shrinking its workforce, literally every other Fortune 500 company reading this earnings report is going to try and replicate that exact same playbook.
That is the macroeconomic takeaway here. Capital is aggressively moving away from traditional human labor and flowing directly into specialized AI talent and raw compute capacity.
That is wild. And what's fascinating is that this internal shift away from traditional human labor, it mirrors a massive external shift in their business model, too.
Yeah, they're moving aggressively away from traditional consumer hardware.
Right. So the physical devices you hold in your hands or, put in your living room, they're becoming less and less central to the financial strategy.
Oh, very much so.
Just look at the segment they call more personal computing. Out of all their major divisions, it was the only one to actually shrink. It was down 1%.
Right.
And if you drill into that, Xbox hardware revenue plummeted 33%. A third of their hardware revenue just vanished. And the filing explicitly states this is entirely due to a lower volume of physical consoles sold.
But look at the gaming revenue as a whole.
Exactly. Overall gaming revenue only decreased 7%. Why? Because the hardware losses were totally buffered by growth in Xbox Game Pass subscriptions.
Right, because the margin dynamics here are crucial. Building and shipping a physical $500 plastic console across the world involves complex supply chains, shipping costs, inventory management, and extremely tight profit margins.
It reminds me of the music industry's evolution, honestly.
Yeah, how so?
Well, we went from buying physical CDs to buying digital MP3s to just paying Spotify a $15 monthly fee for access to the entire library in the cloud.
That's a great point.
Is Microsoft basically abandoning the hardware battle in the living room to just become the utility provider for gaming?
The data strongly suggests they are actively pivoting exactly that way. I mean, if you look at the risk factors, Microsoft explicitly discusses their strategy of making their cloud-based services platform agnostic.
Meaning they don't care what device you play on.
Exactly. They are perfectly willing to make their games and services available on competitors' ecosystems, whether that's a rival console, a smart TV, or a mobile phone. The physical Xbox console is becoming a secondary concern. The true enduring value is in the high-margin, recurring subscription revenue of Game Pass and the underlying cloud infrastructure that streams those games.
So they want to own the service and the infrastructure, not necessarily the plastic box.
Precisely. They want to be the water company charging you for the flow, not the plumber who installs the faucet.
That's a perfect way to put it. It is a pure margin play that aligns perfectly with their broader transition into a cloud and AI-first entity.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's summarize the board states so far. We've established the massive scale of their AI revenue, the infrastructure paradox of heavy hardware for weightless software, the shifting workforce, and this big transition away from physical consumer goods.
Okay.
But the thing is, when you build the world's most valuable, centralized digital fortress, you inevitably attract the world's most sophisticated adversaries.
Absolutely. Because operating at an $82 billion quarterly scale means your threat model is no longer just, individual hackers in a basement.
Right.
It is hostile nation states and global regulatory bodies.
Yeah, so let's talk about the cybersecurity vulnerabilities first, because there is a genuinely chilling detail in the 10Q regarding an incident from November 2023.
Yeah, the password spray attack.
Right. The filing outlines a password spray attack by a nation-state actor. They compromised a legacy test account, and from there, they gained access to Microsoft email accounts and ultimately stole internal source code.
Which is a huge deal.
It really is. Walk me through the mechanics of this, though. What exactly is a password spray attack, and why does a legacy test account matter so much in this context?
So a password spray attack is a brute force method where attackers take a few very common passwords like welcome123 or password 2023, and they try them against thousands of different accounts across an organization simultaneously.
Okay.
So instead of targeting one user with many passwords, they target many users with one common password. And that helps them avoid triggering automatic account lockouts.
That's clever. And the legacy test account.
Well, the fact that they got in through a legacy test account is basically the nightmare scenario for any security team.
Why is that?
Because a test account is often created by an engineer to just try out a new feature, and then it's forgotten. It sits there unmonitored, usually without multi-factor authentication.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the attackers found this forgotten digital side door, walked right in, and basically navigated the network until they reached the source code.
And the source code is the underlying architecture of the software itself.
Exactly.
But it's not just the defenders who have AI now. The attackers do too, right?
Oh, definitely. The 10Q openly and frankly, quite frankly, admits a frightening reality. The rapid evolution of AI use cases may actually outpace the effectiveness of current security products.
Wow.
Yeah, AI is a massive force multiplier for attackers. We are seeing the rise of what's called polymorphic malware.
Wait, polymorphic, meaning the code actually shapeshifts to avoid detection.
Exactly how it sounds. See, traditional antivirus software works kind of like a fingerprint scanner. It looks for a specific string of known malicious code.
Right.
But polymorphic malware uses AI to rewrite its own code every single time it infects a new machine.
That's terrifying.
The underlying malicious objective stays the exact same, but the digital fingerprint changes constantly.
Yeah.
So human defenders and traditional security software simply cannot update their databases fast enough to catch it.
So this whole arms race isn't just about building data centers to sell AI. It's about building enough AI to defend the data centers you just built.
It is an infinite loop of escalation.
But the threat actors aren't just, wearing hoodies. Some of them are wearing suits.
Oh, for sure.
Because the 10Q layers in massive legal and regulatory headwinds. For example, there is an IRS notice of proposed adjustment seeking a staggering $28.9 billion, plus penalties, for transfer pricing issues stretching back to between 2004 and 2013.
Yeah, that's a massive number.
I am not an accountant. How does transfer pricing generate a $28.9 billion tax bill?
Well, transfer pricing is essentially how multinational companies value transactions across their own borders to optimize their tax liabilities.
Okay, can you give an example?
Yeah, sure. For instance, if a company develops a brilliant piece of software intellectual property in the United States, but transfers the rights to that IP to a subsidiary in a country with a much lower corporate tax rate, say Ireland, well, the profits from selling that software globally are taxed at the lower Irish rate.
Ah, I see.
So the IRS audit is arguing that the internal transfer price Microsoft used to move that IP was fundamentally undervalued, meaning they severely underpaid U.S. taxes for nearly a decade.
And it's not just the U.S. coming after them.
No, not at all.
The filing also mentions an October 2024 GDPR fine from the Irish Data Protection Commission against LinkedIn for privacy violations. So I have to ask, with global regulators demanding tens of billions of dollars and nation-states hacking their source code, are these just the normal costs of doing business when you are this massive? Or do these represent systemic threats to their growth?
Well, it represents a structural change in the operating environment. I mean, these aren't isolated incidents.
Okay.
The IRS audit and the European privacy fines demonstrate a really global bipartisan consensus. Governments worldwide realize that data and AI compute are essentially the new oil, and they are actively trying to claw back the immense wealth and power concentrated in just a few tech platforms.
Which makes sense from their perspective.
Yeah, it is a persistent structural friction that will permanently impact their operating margins going forward.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Whether you are evaluating your portfolio, managing a team, or just using these tools on your computer, this deep dive reveals the blueprint of the next decade.
It really does.
We are looking at a company sprinting at breakneck speed toward an autonomous AI-driven future. They are actively trading physical consumer hardware and traditional human headcount for massive, heavy iron data center investments and highly specialized AI talent.
Yeah.
And they're doing all of this while navigating unprecedented AI-enhanced cyber threats and multi-billion-dollar regulatory crosshairs.
It is a really high-stakes balancing act of capital and physics.
Yeah.
And, to leave you with something to consider, there is one final detail buried in the 10Q that I think perfectly encapsulates the strange new world we are entering.
Oh, lay it on us.
It's regarding Microsoft's relationship with OpenAI.
Okay.
The filing details that Microsoft has committed $13 billion in funding to OpenAI, and in exchange, they hold roughly a 27% stake on an as-converted basis.
Wait, so as converted basis, meaning if OpenAI were to convert its various preferred shares and profit participation units into standard common stock, Microsoft would own 27% of the entire pie.
Correct, so it is a massive financial tether between the two. However, the filing explicitly notes a structural complication. OpenAI recently completed a recapitalization to officially form a public benefit corporation, or PBC.
Interesting. But why does that matter in the grand scheme of things?
Because Microsoft is a publicly traded company. By law, it is fundamentally bound by a fiduciary duty to maximize profit for its shareholders above all else.
Sure.
But a public benefit corporation is legally bound to a specific public benefit charter. And OpenAI's charter states that its primary mandate is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity and that this mandate supersedes generating profit.
Wait, so their core mission is legally divorced from maximizing financial return.
Exactly. So I will leave you with this question to ponder long after this deep dive ends. As the agentic computing era accelerates and these AI models become more powerful and autonomous, what happens when the absolute fiduciary profit mandate of an $82 billion a quarter titan directly collides with the public benefit mandate of the very AI engine powering its growth?
That is a profound tension.
Right. How do you reconcile a legal duty to shareholders with a legal duty to humanity?
That is the ultimate paradox of this new era. You can't put a public benefit mandate on an X-ray, and you certainly can't easily model humanity's benefit on a balance sheet.
No, you can't.
It leaves us right back where we started, staring into the data, trying to weigh a digital cloud that is getting physically heavier and ethically more complex by the day. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Stay curious and keep questioning the data behind the headlines.